1600 years ago, Japan was a land where reality and legend lived side by side. As the first light of dawn touched the mist-covered mountains and endless forests, it felt as if ancient spirits were awakening with the rising sun. This was a time before towering cities, before glowing lights and modern roads. Japan was still shaping its identity, built upon small villages, sacred beliefs, and a deep connection to nature. Dense forests stretched across the land, rivers carved their paths through valleys, and the ocean surrounded the islands like a protective guardian. Villages were simple and close to the earth, built from wood, clay, and stone. Life was slow, yet deeply meaningful. Every sunrise brought gratitude, and every sunset brought reflection. During this era, Japan was transitioning from tribal societies towards centralized rule. Powerful clans governed their own territories, but one clan gradually rose above all others, the Yamato clan. Through alliances, marriages, and warfare, they extended their influence across the islands, laying the foundation for Japan's imperial lineage that would endure for centuries. People believed the natural world was alive with divine spirits known as kami. Mountains, rivers, trees, wind, and even stones were thought to contain sacred energy. This belief formed the heart of Shinto, Japan's ancient spiritual tradition. Every aspect of life was connected to these unseen forces, and harmony with nature was considered the highest virtue. Each morning, families bowed before small shrines, offering prayers for protection, good harvests, and peace. When storms struck, they were seen as expressions of divine emotion. When crops flourished, it was considered a blessing from the spirits. Life itself was a sacred exchange between humanity and the natural world. Rice farming stood at the center of society. Rice was not only food, but also currency, power, and honor. Wealth was measured in rice, and entire communities worked together to cultivate the flooded fields. Men, women, and children labored barefoot in muddy waters, planting seedlings under the sun. Every harvest was celebrated with festivals, music, and offerings to the gods. Japan's forests were thick and mysterious. Travelers often feared wandering alone, believing the woods were home to spirits, creatures, and hidden dangers. Talismans and protective charms were carried to ward off unseen forces. Stories of supernatural encounters were shared beside flickering fires at night, shaping generations of belief and imagination. Clothing was simple, practical, and symbolic. Natural dyes created soft shades of earth tones, brown, green, blue, and white. Each color held meaning, representing harmony, purity, life, and protection. Fabrics were woven by hand, often from silk or cotton, and garments reflected both status and tradition. Weapons, especially swords, carried deep spiritual significance. They were not merely tools of battle, but sacred objects believed to hold the warrior's soul. This philosophy laid the foundation for the legendary samurai code that would later define Japan. Honor, discipline, loyalty, and self-control became sacred virtues, shaping the nation's identity for generations. The Yamato rulers declared themselves descendants of the sun goddess Amaterasu, granting divine legitimacy to their authority. This belief elevated the emperor beyond mortal status, making loyalty to the throne a sacred duty. Thus, the concept of a divine monarchy became deeply rooted in Japanese culture. At the same time, influences from China and Korea began reaching Japan. Writing systems, advanced tools, architecture, and new philosophies arrived across the seas. Among the most transformative arrivals was Buddhism. Its teachings of compassion, impermanence, and enlightenment slowly reshaped spiritual life. Temples began to rise, grand wooden structures adorned with statues, lanterns, and sacred art. These became centers of worship, education, and cultural exchange. Monks introduced meditation, calligraphy, painting, and moral philosophy, deeply influencing Japanese thought and aesthetics. Despite spiritual growth, conflict remained constant. Rival clans fought relentlessly for land, power, and influence. Villages were destroyed, families displaced, and warriors sacrificed their lives in endless struggles. Yet discipline and resilience shaped the people, forging a culture built upon endurance and mental strength. Even in hardship, beauty thrived. Japanese art embraced simplicity and silence. Open spaces, natural light, and subtle detail expressed a philosophy that valued restraint and balance. This deep respect for minimalism continues to define Japanese aesthetics even today. At night, elders gathered children around glowing fires to tell stories of heroes, spirits, monsters, and divine beings. These tales preserved history, morality, and courage, passing wisdom from generation to generation. They taught honor, loyalty, sacrifice, and hope. 1,600 years ago, Japan was a land of sacred mountains, whispering forests, and unbreakable spirit. Though centuries have passed, its ancient soul remains alive, in the silent temples, in blooming cherry blossoms, and in traditions passed down through countless generations. This was only the beginning. In the next chapter of this journey, we will uncover how Buddhism transformed society, how the samurai emerged, how secret rituals shaped destiny, and how ancient Japan forged a legacy that still echoes across the world. The story continues.
As centuries unfolded, ancient Japan continued to transform, shaped by belief, ambition, warfare, and wisdom. The arrival of Buddhism slowly changed the spiritual landscape of the islands. Temples rose among forests and hills, their wooden structures glowing in candlelight and echoing with chanting monks. These temples became centers of learning, meditation, healing, and philosophical exploration. The teachings of Buddha brought new ideas of suffering, compassion, discipline, and enlightenment. Life was no longer seen only as a sacred connection to nature, but also as a spiritual journey toward awakening. Meditation practices taught people to quiet their minds, observe their thoughts, and seek inner peace. As Buddhist ideas blended with native Shinto beliefs, a uniquely Japanese spiritual identity emerged, one that honored both nature spirits and universal compassion. Shrines and temples often stood side by side, representing harmony rather than conflict between faiths. Meanwhile, political power continued to consolidate. The Yamato court grew stronger, organizing society under centralized rule. Written records became more common, allowing history, law, and governance to be preserved. This period marked the early foundations of Japan's imperial system, which remains the oldest continuous monarchy in the world. With stability came ambition. Noble families competed fiercely for influence. Court life became complex, filled with ceremony, poetry, diplomacy, and intrigue. Elegant clothing, refined manners, and artistic mastery became signs of status. Music and dance flourished, expressing emotion, reverence, and beauty. Yet beneath the grace of the court, the countryside remained harsh. Farmers battled unpredictable weather, floods, droughts, and famine. Life was fragile. Survival depended on cooperation, discipline, and relentless labor. Still, communities supported one another, bound by shared faith and tradition. As conflicts increased, warrior clans gained prominence. These early warriors were the ancestors of the legendary samurai. They trained relentlessly in archery, swordsmanship, horseback riding, and strategy. More than fighters, they were expected to live by strict moral principles, loyalty, courage, honor, and self-control. The sword became their soul. Each blade was forged through sacred ritual, layered steel, and intense heat. Blacksmiths prayed before crafting weapons, believing divine spirits guided their hands. A warrior's sword was never drawn lightly, for it symbolized life, death, and destiny. Battles were brutal and unforgiving. Armies clashed across valleys and plains, their banners flying beneath storm-filled skies. War cries echoed through mountains. Victory meant survival, but defeat often meant extinction. Entire clans vanished from history, leaving only whispers behind. Despite endless conflict, innovation thrived. Architecture advanced, creating grand palaces and fortified strongholds. Irrigation systems improved farming. Shipbuilding expanded trade across seas. Diplomacy with China and Korea brought astronomy, medicine, metallurgy, and political philosophy. One of the greatest achievements of this era was the development of writing and literature. Chronicles were written to preserve history, genealogy, and divine ancestry. Poetry became an art form of emotional expression. Through carefully chosen words, writers captured sorrow, longing, beauty, and hope. Japanese aesthetics deepened, valuing silence, emptiness, and imperfection. The philosophy that beauty lies in simplicity became central to art, architecture, and daily life. This belief shaped gardens, tea rituals, painting, calligraphy, and poetry. Deep in mountain forests, secret rituals were practiced by monks and mystics. These ascetics believed enlightenment could only be achieved through extreme discipline. They fasted, meditated beneath waterfalls, walked barefoot across frozen stone, and isolated themselves for years. Legends say some gained supernatural insight, healing powers, or visions of the unseen realms. Stories of hidden knowledge spread across the land. Sacred scrolls were rumored to contain forgotten wisdom, cosmic secrets, and divine prophecies. Some claimed ancient civilizations existed before recorded history, their remains hidden beneath the earth and sea. These myths fueled curiosity, fear, and wonder. Natural disasters frequently reshaped life. Earthquakes shattered villages, volcanic eruptions darkened skies, tsunamis devoured coastlines. Yet each catastrophe reinforced spiritual devotion. Survival was seen as proof of divine protection. Rebuilding became a sacred duty. As centuries passed, the warrior class rose to dominance. Samurai leadership reshaped political power, leading to the eventual formation of the shogunate, a military government that would rule Japan for generations. Discipline, loyalty, and sacrifice became absolute virtues. Honor outweighed life itself. A warrior who failed his duty accepted death without hesitation. This extreme code forged unmatched loyalty and courage, creating one of the most disciplined warrior traditions in human history. Yet beyond battlefields and palaces, ordinary life continued. Farmers planted rice, fishermen sailed dangerous waters, artisans carved wood, forged metal, and wove silk. Children learned traditions through stories and observation. Elders preserved memory through ritual and wisdom. Seasonal festivals celebrated harvest, renewal, ancestors, and divine protection. Lanterns glowed across villages, illuminating laughter, music, dance, and prayer. These gatherings reminded people of unity, hope, and gratitude. Even today, echoes of ancient Japan remain. In the silent bow before entering a shrine, in the careful preparation of tea, in the discipline of martial arts, in the respect for nature, in the calm acceptance of impermanence. 1600 years ago, Japan began a transformation that would shape one of the most unique civilizations in human history. From forest villages to imperial courts, from spiritual devotion to warrior discipline, this era forged the soul of a nation. The secrets of ancient Japan lie not only in ruins and scrolls, but in living traditions, whispered prayers, and timeless values. And as the wind flows through bamboo forests and temple bells echo across misty valleys, the spirit of ancient Japan still speaks, reminding us that history never truly fades. It simply waits to be remembered.